Karen Williams had always been the type of person who believed rules didn't apply to her. At 42, she had perfected the art of demanding to speak to managers, cutting in lines, and making scenes whenever things didn't go her way. Her bleached blonde hair was always styled in that particular bob cut that seemed to scream entitlement, and her voice could reach decibel levels that made dogs howl 3 blocks away. On this particular sunny Tuesday morning in London, Karen was visiting Buckingham Palace with her teenage daughter, Emma. It was supposed to be a special mother-daughter trip, but Emma was already regretting coming along. She walked several steps behind her mother, pretending she didn't know the woman who was loudly complaining about everything from the ticket prices to the walking distance. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Karen announced to anyone within earshot as they approached the palace gates. "We paid good money for this tour, and they expect us to wait in line like common tourists. I have a platinum credit card and a medical condition that prevents me from standing too long." Emma rolled her eyes. Her mother's mysterious medical condition seemed to appear and disappear, depending on whether there was a line to skip or a comfortable seat to claim. The crowd around them was typical for a Tuesday morning at the palace. Families with excited children clutching Union Jack flags, elderly couples taking photos, and tourists from around the world all gathered to witness the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves except Karen, who continued her running commentary of complaints. "Look at these guards," she said, pointing at the royal guard standing at attention in their iconic red uniforms and tall black bearskin hats. "They're just standing there like statues. What exactly are we paying to see? I could hire better entertainment for my nephew's birthday party." The royal guards, trained to maintain perfect composure regardless of circumstances, remained motionless. Their faces showed no emotion, their eyes stared straight ahead, and they stood as still as the palace walls themselves. These men had undergone months of rigorous training, learning to ignore distractions, insults, and even physical discomfort while on duty. But Karen wasn't finished. She noticed that one of the guards, a young man named James Mitchell, was positioned near a rope barrier that separated the tourists from the ceremonial area. James was 23 years old, had served in Afghanistan, and took immense pride in his role as a royal guard. He had been on duty since dawn, standing perfectly still for hours, maintaining the dignity and tradition of his position. "Excuse me," Karen called out loudly, waving her hand at James. "Excuse me, I'm talking to you." James, following protocol, did not respond or acknowledge her in any way. His training had taught him that maintaining the integrity of his post was more important than responding to tourists' attempts to get attention. This silence only fueled Karen's irritation. She wasn't used to being ignored, and certainly not by someone she considered to be little more than a costumed performer. "I said, excuse me!" she shouted even louder, causing other tourists to turn and stare. Emma's face turned red with embarrassment as she tried to blend into the crowd. When James still didn't respond, Karen's face began to turn the same shade as his uniform. She had encountered unresponsive customer service representatives before, rude store clerks, and dismissive managers, but never had someone completely ignored her so blatantly. "This is unacceptable customer service," she declared to the growing crowd of onlookers who were now more interested in her outburst than the palace itself. "I demand to speak to whoever is in charge of these people immediately." A palace security officer noticed the commotion and began walking in their direction, but he was still about 50 yards away, dealing with crowd control near the main gates. Karen's voice grew shriller as her frustration mounted. "I have rights as a paying customer. You work for the public, which means you work for me. I pay taxes, I pay for tours, and I demand basic respect and acknowledgement." The crowd around them began to murmur. Some tourists looked uncomfortable. Others seemed annoyed that Karen was disrupting their experience, and a few pulled out their phones, sensing that something dramatic was about to unfold. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, please, let's just move on. You're making a scene." "I don't care if I'm making a scene," Karen snapped back. "Someone needs to teach these people proper manners and respect for paying customers." James continued to stare straight ahead, his breathing steady, his posture perfect. Inside, he was mentally reciting his training mantras, reminding himself that no matter what happened, he must maintain his position and dignity. He had dealt with difficult tourists before, but something about this woman's escalating anger told him this situation was different. Karen stepped closer to the rope barrier, her voice now reaching a pitch that could probably be heard inside the palace itself. "I'm going to report every single one of you. This is discrimination against American tourists. I have connections, I have social media followers, and I will make sure everyone knows how poorly visitors are treated here." Other tourists began creating distance between themselves and Karen, some shaking their heads disapprovingly, others pulling out phones to record what was clearly becoming a very public meltdown. "Mom, seriously, people are staring," Emma whispered urgently, her face now completely flushed with embarrassment. But Karen was beyond reason. She had worked herself into a state where backing down would feel like defeat, and Karen Williams had never backed down from anything in her life. She had complained her way to refunds, upgrades, and special treatment countless times before, and she wasn't about to let some guy in a funny hat get the better of her. "I'm warning you," she said, pointing her finger directly at James. "You have exactly 10 seconds to acknowledge me and show me the respect I deserve, or you're going to regret it." James, maintaining his training and discipline, continued to stand at perfect attention. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, his expression unchanged, his breathing steady and controlled. The security officer was now closer, having noticed the disturbance. But he was still dealing with another situation involving a lost child and couldn't immediately intervene. Karen began counting down loudly. 10, 9, 8, 7. The crowd fell silent, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Cameras were now openly pointed in their direction, and Emma was desperately trying to pull her mother away from the scene. 6, 5, 4. James's training kicked into overdrive. He had been warned about situations like this, where tourists might try to provoke reactions through various means. He remained steadfast, knowing that his duty was clear and non-negotiable. 3, 2. Karen's hand was now clenched into a fist, her face red with rage, her entire body trembling with indignation. 1. What happened next would be captured on dozens of phones and shared millions of times across social media platforms around the world. In a moment of absolute fury and entitlement, Karen Williams stepped over the rope barrier, raised her hand, and delivered a sharp, resounding slap across the face of Royal Guard James Mitchell. The sound echoed across the courtyard like a gunshot. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. James's head had turned slightly from the impact, but slowly, with incredible self-control, he turned his face back to the front and resumed his perfect posture. The crowd gasped collectively. Emma screamed, "Mom, no!" But it was too late. Karen stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, looking satisfied that she had finally gotten some kind of reaction, even if it wasn't the acknowledgement she had demanded. What she didn't realize was that she had just committed an assault on a member of Her Majesty's Guard in front of hundreds of witnesses, with multiple video recordings, and within view of some of the most sophisticated security systems in the world. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the birds seemed to have stopped chirping. Every eye in the vicinity was focused on Karen, who was just beginning to realize that something was very, very wrong. James maintained his position, but a small red mark was visible on his cheek where her hand had made contact. His jaw was clenched slightly, but his eyes remained fixed straight ahead, his training overriding any natural impulse to react. That's when Karen heard the sound that would haunt her for months to come. the heavy, synchronized footsteps of multiple security personnel converging on her location from all directions. The first person to reach Karen was Inspector Sarah Collins, a veteran palace security officer who had seen her share of incidents over the years, but nothing quite like this. Sarah was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an authoritative presence that could command respect from world leaders and troublemakers alike. "Ma'am, step away from the guard immediately and place your hands where I can see them," Inspector Collins commanded, in a voice that left no room for negotiation. Karen, still riding the adrenaline of her outburst, turned to face the inspector with the same indignant energy she had directed at James. "Finally, someone with authority. I demand to speak to whoever is in charge of training these rude, unprofessional guards. This man has been ignoring me for 10 minutes, showing complete disrespect to paying customers." Inspector Collins's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for assault on a royal guard and breach of the peace. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly advise you to use that right." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Her confident smirk faltered as the reality of the situation began to sink in. "Arrested? You can't arrest me. I'm an American citizen. I was just trying to get his attention. It was barely a tap." Around them, the crowd had swelled to nearly 200 people. Phones were recording from every angle, and several professional photographers who had been covering the palace for news outlets were now focusing their cameras on the unfolding drama. Emma stood frozen in horror, tears streaming down her face as she watched her mother being read her rights by British police. "Mom, why did you do that?" Emma cried out, but Karen was too focused on arguing with Inspector Collins to pay attention to her daughter's distress. Within minutes, 4 additional security officers arrived on the scene. They moved with military precision, creating a perimeter around Karen while maintaining crowd control. The tourists were being gently but firmly moved back to create space for the arrest procedures. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Karen continued to protest as handcuffs were produced. "I want to speak to the American Embassy immediately. This is harassment of an innocent tourist who was simply trying to communicate with your staff." Inspector Collins had dealt with entitled individuals before, but Karen's complete lack of awareness about the severity of her actions was remarkable even by her standards. "Ma'am, you physically assaulted a member of Her Majesty's Guard while he was on official duty. This is a serious criminal offense under British law, regardless of your nationality." As the handcuffs clicked into place, Karen's protests grew more frantic. "You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? I have lawyers. I have connections. My husband is a successful businessman in Chicago." James, meanwhile, continued to stand at perfect attention. His training demanded that he maintain his post unless officially relieved by a superior officer. Despite the chaos swirling around him, despite the red mark still visible on his cheek, and despite the unprecedented nature of what had just occurred, he remained motionless and professional. The incident was already spreading across social media. Karen Slapp's guard began trending within 30 minutes of the videos being uploaded. The footage showed everything: Karen's escalating demands, her countdown, the shocking moment of contact, and her bewildered reaction to being arrested. As Karen was led away toward a waiting police vehicle, she continued her protests, seemingly oblivious to the hundreds of people recording her every word. "This is a violation of my constitutional rights. I demand to speak to a manager. Someone is going to lose their job over this." Emma, now completely mortified, was approached by a kind palace official who specialized in victim services. "Miss, are you traveling with her? Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" Through her tears, Emma nodded. "We're staying at a hotel near Hyde Park. I can't believe she did this. I tried to stop her, but she never listens. She always thinks she can get away with anything." The palace official, a woman named Margaret Thompson, had seen this type of family dynamic before during various incidents. "Your mother is going to be processed according to British law. You're welcome to come with us to the Palace Administrative Office where we can help you contact your family back home and arrange for proper legal representation. As Karen was placed in the police vehicle, still protesting loudly enough to be heard through the windows, a crowd of onlookers watched in stunned silence. Many were shaking their heads in disbelief, others were furiously typing on their phones, and some were already sharing the videos they had captured. James, finally relieved of his post by his commanding officer, was escorted away for medical evaluation and to give his statement. Despite maintaining his composure throughout the entire ordeal, the incident would require a full investigation and report. Within the next hour, the story had exploded across international news outlets. American news networks picked up the story with headlines like "American Tourist Arrested for Slapping Royal Guard" and "Palace Incident Shocks Tourists." British media focused on the professionalism of the Guard and security response, with headlines such as "Royal Guard's Dignity Intact After Unprecedented Tourist Attack." At the local police station, Karen was being processed for assault and breach of peace. The booking officer, Sergeant Michael Davies, had dealt with tourist incidents before, but nothing quite this straightforward in terms of evidence. There were literally dozens of video recordings from multiple angles, hundreds of witnesses, and the assault had occurred on one of the most monitored pieces of property in the United Kingdom. "Mrs. Williams," Sergeant Davies said as he completed her booking paperwork, "I need to inform you that assaulting a royal guard is taken very seriously here. This isn't a simple tourist misunderstanding. You'll be appearing before a magistrate, and depending on the charges, you could be facing significant fines, imprisonment, and deportation." For the first time since the incident began, Karen's defiant facade started to crack. "Imprisonment? But I'm supposed to fly home tomorrow. I have a job, I have responsibilities. This whole thing is being blown completely out of proportion. Ma'am, you struck a member of the Queen's Guard while he was performing his official duties, in full view of the public, at one of Britain's most important cultural sites. There's nothing disproportionate about treating this as the serious crime it is." Meanwhile, back at the palace, the incident had triggered a full review of security protocols. While physical confrontations with guards were rare, they weren't unheard of. What made this case unique was the brazen nature of the assault and the perpetrator's complete lack of understanding about what she had done. Captain Robert Hayes, James's commanding officer, was conducting his preliminary interview about the incident. "Mitchell, I want you to walk me through everything that happened, from the moment you first noticed this woman approaching your position." James, now out of his ceremonial uniform and in regular clothes, maintained the same composure he had shown while on duty. "Sir, the subject began attempting to engage me verbally approximately 15 minutes before the physical contact occurred. She appeared increasingly agitated when I maintained protocol and did not respond to her calls for attention. Did you at any point feel that you were in physical danger?" Captain Hayes asked. "No, sir. While her behavior was erratic and her voice was raised, I did not perceive her as a physical threat until the moment she crossed the barrier. Even then, the assault was brief and did not compromise my ability to maintain my post." The captain nodded, making notes. "Your conduct throughout this incident was exemplary. Mitchell, maintaining your composure under those circumstances, especially with such a large crowd watching, reflects very well on your training and character." Back at the police station, Emma had been allowed to visit her mother. The reunion was tense, with Emma clearly struggling between concern for her parent and embarrassment over her behavior. "Mom, everyone back home is going to see this," Emma said quietly. "The videos are everywhere. Dad's going to be so angry, and I don't even know how to explain this to my friends." Karen, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her situation, looked defeated for the first time. "I just wanted him to acknowledge me. I never imagined they would make such a big deal about it." "You hit someone, Mom." You hit a guard at Buckingham Palace while hundreds of people were watching. How did you think that was going to end?" The question hung in the air as Karen contemplated the ruins of what was supposed to have been a pleasant mother-daughter vacation. Outside the police station, reporters were already gathering, having caught wind of the story through social media and police scanner reports. Her court appearance was scheduled for the next morning, and her lawyer, hastily contacted through the American consulate, had already warned her that pleading guilty to a lesser charge might be her best option to avoid more serious consequences. The story was far from over, but Karen was beginning to realize that her actions would have consequences far beyond anything she had ever imagined when she decided that a royal guard needed to show her more respect. The next morning, Westminster Magistrates' Court was buzzing with activity. News crews had set up outside, and a small crowd of curious onlookers gathered to catch a glimpse of the woman who had become an overnight internet sensation. Karen Williams, dressed in the same clothes from the day before and looking considerably less confident than she had at the palace, sat in the defendant's chair next to her court-appointed lawyer, Mr. David Ashford. Magistrate Elizabeth Thornton, a stern woman in her 60s with decades of experience dealing with various offenses, reviewed the case files before her. She had seen the video evidence, read the police reports, and noted the unprecedented media attention this case was receiving. "Mrs. Williams," Magistrate Thornton began, "you stand accused of assault on a royal guard and breach of the peace. How do you plead?" Karen looked to her lawyer, who nodded encouragingly. They had spent the previous evening discussing her options, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. "Guilty, Your Honor," she said in a voice barely above a whisper. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Emma, sitting in the public gallery, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her father had flown in overnight from Chicago and was sitting beside her, his face a mask of embarrassment and disappointment. "Mrs. Williams," the magistrate continued, "before I impose sentence, I want you to understand the significance of your actions. Royal guards are not performers or entertainers. They are highly trained military personnel carrying out ceremonial duties that are integral to British heritage and tradition. Your assault on Guard Mitchell was not only a crime against him personally, but an attack on an institution that represents the dignity and history of our nation." Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The weight of the magistrate's words, combined with the reality of her situation, was finally breaking through her defensive walls. "Furthermore," Magistrate Thornton continued, "your behavior has been viewed by millions of people worldwide, making you not just a criminal defendant, but an unfortunate representative of tourist behavior in our country. The damage to both your reputation and the perception of visitor conduct at our cultural sites cannot be understated." The prosecutor, Miss Jennifer Walsh, stood to present the Crown's position. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge that Mrs. Williams has pleaded guilty and shown some remorse, we cannot overlook the severity of her actions. The assault was unprovoked, witnessed by hundreds of people, and committed against a serviceman who was unable to defend himself due to his ceremonial duties. We recommend a substantial fine, a period of community service, and a formal ban from all royal properties." Karen's lawyer stood to respond. "Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender who acted impulsively in a moment of frustration. She deeply regrets her actions and the embarrassment she has caused to herself, her family, and the institutions involved. She is prepared to make amends and learn from this experience." Magistrate Thornton considered both arguments before delivering her sentence. "Mrs. Williams, I sentence you to a fine of £5,000, 100 hours of community service to be completed in your home country under supervision, and a lifetime ban from all royal properties in the United Kingdom. Additionally, you are required to write a formal apology letter to Guard Mitchell and undergo anger management counseling." The sentence hit Karen like a physical blow. The fine was substantial. The ban meant she could never return to see the places she had only begun to visit. and the community service would be a constant reminder of her actions for months to come. "You are fortunate," the magistrate added, "that Guard Mitchell has requested leniency in your case. His statement indicates that he bears no personal animosity toward you and hopes this experience will serve as a learning opportunity rather than simply punishment." As Karen was led out of the courtroom, reporters shouted questions that she ignored. Her family hustled her toward a waiting car, but not before several photographers captured images of her tear-stained face and defeated posture. The story's conclusion played out over the following weeks. Back in Chicago, Karen found herself unemployed after her employer, a customer service company, decided her actions were incompatible with their corporate values. The irony was not lost on anyone that a woman who had made a career out of dealing with difficult customers had become the most difficult customer of all. Emma returned to college early, unable to face her friends' questions and comments about the viral videos. Her relationship with her mother, already strained, became even more difficult as she struggled to understand how someone she loved could have acted so thoughtlessly. The community service Karen was required to complete involved working at a veterans support center, where she slowly began to understand the dedication and sacrifice that military service requires. Her supervisor, a former Army sergeant named Patricia Rodriguez, didn't coddle her or make excuses for her behavior. "You know," Patricia told her during one of their sessions, "the guard you hit probably joined the military to serve something bigger than himself. These aren't people playing dress-up for tourists. They're soldiers who've earned their positions through dedication and sacrifice." For the first time, Karen began to truly comprehend what she had done. The anger management classes she was required to attend helped her understand that her pattern of entitled behavior had been building toward this moment for years. Meanwhile, James Mitchell returned to his duties at Buckingham Palace after a brief leave. The incident had made him something of a celebrity among his fellow guards, and he received letters of support from around the world. However, he handled the attention with the same dignity he had shown during the assault itself. In a rare interview with a military magazine, James reflected on the experience. "I joined the Guard to serve my country and uphold traditions that are bigger than any individual moment. What happened that day was unfortunate, but it also showed the importance of maintaining standards and dignity even when faced with disrespect." The palace used the incident as a teaching moment, installing additional signage about appropriate behavior around guards and increasing the presence of security personnel during high-traffic periods. 6 months after the incident, Karen received an unexpected response to the apology letter she had been required to write. James Mitchell, through official channels, had sent a brief but gracious reply acknowledging her apology and expressing hope that she had learned from the experience. The letter's final paragraph particularly struck her. "Service means putting duty above personal comfort or convenience. I hope your experience has taught you that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their position or ability to respond to disrespect. I wish you well in your journey toward becoming a better person." As Karen read those words in her small apartment in Chicago, she realized that the young man she had struck had shown more grace and maturity in his response than she had displayed in years of demanding special treatment and throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way. The viral videos of her assault on the Royal Guard would remain online forever, a permanent reminder of one woman's moment of unthinkable entitlement. But perhaps more importantly, they also served as a lesson to millions of viewers about the consequences of treating others without respect and dignity. Emma, now a senior in college, occasionally spoke about the incident in her communications classes when discussing social media's impact on personal accountability. "My mother thought she could act however she wanted because she'd always gotten away with it before," she would tell her classmates. "But in today's world, everyone has a camera, and your worst moment can become your defining moment if you're not careful." The royal guard, who had maintained his composure under extraordinary circumstances, became a symbol of professionalism and duty. Karen Williams became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked entitlement and the importance of treating others with respect, regardless of their position or ability to fight back. In the end, a moment's loss of control had taught both a nation and a family valuable lessons about dignity, respect, and the true meaning of service. The Royal Guard had won not through retaliation, but through unwavering commitment to his principles, while Karen learned that actions have consequences, even for those who believe they're above the rules.